Dragon Episode 10, The Black Queen, was a great way to end the season. I think if you were a book fan, you knew exactly where they were going to end the season, with the incident at Storm's End. But before we could get to that point, we had some great character stuff on Dragonstone that is vital when setting the groundwork, not only for the Storm's End incident, but Season 2 as a whole. I know a lot of people think Rhaenyra and Daemon were very out of character this episode. However, I argue, given the context of the series as a whole and the events to come, it does make sense, with a lot of claims of character assassination not really sticking when you consider the actions of the characters in the show, what we know of events to come, and what will happen in the book. However, what I will agree with is this. Over the length of the season, more so after the time jump, the characterization and consistency in the writing of them does seem a bit all over the place and contradictory. Frankly, comments writers have made in interviews really did not help the situation, and only fanned the flames. However, I will leave that for a video all on its own that I'm working on. The opening scene with Luke talking to Rhaenyra is vital. We really get to see how much Luke admires his mother, but also how much Rhaenyra loves her children. This not only helps with the impact of Luke's death at the end, but really helps set up events that are to come in future seasons. You really get the vibe that Luke would do anything for his mother and his family, and this helps the viewers really feel the impact of his death and adds to the peril of the entire Storm's End sequence. Now, what I love about the scene where Rhaenyra finds out not only about her father's death, but also Aegon's very public crowning, is despite all the drama that has been going on regarding who is the rightful heir for the last 15 years or so, Rhaenyra still seems very taken aback by the situation. Maybe she thought that when it came down to it, Otto wouldn't have the balls, or maybe she truly did believe she and Alicent had mended some bridges. All I can say was the acting was phenomenal here. One thing I find interesting is Daemon's view that the Greens murdered his brother. Now, I know in the book there is a brief suggestion maybe the king was poisoned, and I maybe feel they were hinting at that when Daemon suspected the tea Viserys was drinking in episode 8. But I think if they were hinting at this, I would have expected to have seen more than we did. In future seasons, it may come out maybe Larys Otto was in fact poisoning Viserys, maybe even the Maesters themselves, to try and spread division. But I really love how all this lights a fire in Daemon, and he automatically shifts into war mode. It's funny, you have people around him talking about trying to broach a peaceful outcome, but Daemon is the only one with the sense to point out a war fleet could be heading to Dragonstone right now, that they all need to be ready and plan. It does also help set up a little bit of division between Rhaenyra and Daemon, in the sense that she's still hoping things could end without bloodshed. So all of this stress causes Rhaenyra to go into labour early, and we are treated with our third traumatic birth scene of the season, which is something I never thought I would say. It seems like the show has replaced sex and nudity for traumatic birth, which is certainly a choice, but in this case it really is vital to the story. People have complained a lot about the fact Daemon was not with his wife during this event, which I can very much understand from a modern point of view. In this setting, and seen throughout Fire and Blood and the main books, it's not all that common for fathers to be present at the birth. Plus, you also have to factor in Daemon is a little busy trying to plan a war and defense of Dragonstone, while everyone around him seems content to wait. I also think he could have had a bit of trauma after what happened with Rhaenyra, which could kind of kept him away from the birth. So we end up with Rhaenyra giving birth to a stillborn daughter. Again, the acting here was top notch. I was a little bit disappointed that the stillbirth wasn't some half-dragon baby, like rumoured so in the books. I don't know, I just like how that would have linked back into the main show with Daenerys. We do also get a scene of Daemon lamenting his losses on a beach, which I do think people have overlooked when they criticise how little he seemed to care. However, I would still have liked a scene between the two, or some kind of acknowledgement in the dialogue about the loss other than the funeral scene. I can't remember, but did we even hear the baby's name be given? I love Rhaenyra's crowning. Calm and understated, in great contrast to that of Aegon. Plus, given the mood on Dragonstone, a simple event fits the bill. I don't know, but I think they're setting up the Cargill twins with a lot more character than I expected, with maybe Eric playing a bigger role than he appears to have in the book. Needless to say, if you do read the book, you know where this is heading, and I think giving the twins more screen time and character can only help create some great dramatic TV in next season. The scene in the whole was low-key but powerful. The Black Council scene, well, I absolutely love this version of the map table, lit from beneath with candles. It's beautiful, and would have fit Stannis and the Lord of Light stuff in the main show really well. We still have Rhaenyra trying to find a way to keep the peace. Some people have questioned this as out of character or showing weakness, but I think it's much more complicated than that. She's just lost her baby, her crown has been usurped, you have Daemon ready to jump into a bloody civil war, putting the whole family in danger. It's a powder keg ready to go off if the wrong choices are made now, rashly in anger. Plus, I think Rhaenyra is still trying to hold on to peace for the sake of her father's memory. She knows how broken he would be to know his kin are about to bloody annihilate each other. I do also like the talk of the strength of the sides in terms of the dragons. Daemon setting up the Dragon Season 2 with Vermithor. People for some reason are convinced they are dropping the Dragonstone storyline and Rhaenyra will claim Vermithor, but I just don't see how that would work at all. I do like the fact they are making plans of surrounding King's Landing seem really easy. One little thing I picked up on is Daemon states the Greens have 4 dragons. So we have Aegon and Sunfire, Aemond and Vhagar, Rhaenyra and Dreamfire, and of course, Daeron and Tessarion, which means I think we will be seeing Daeron in Season 2, and he's not just been completely forgotten. The bridge scene calls back to almost the exact same similar scene at the start of the show. Once again, Otto faces off against Daemon. They really get across how fundamental the divide between the two factions has always somewhat been there under the surface, bubbling away until it all came back to Otto and Daemon. I do think Otto makes some very good points in this scene in trying to convince Rhaenyra to surrender. Aegon has the Conqueror's name, sword, crown and seat, every mark of a legitimate king he possesses, crowned in front of the small folk who accepted their new king. You really see Otto's belief that Aegon is the rightful heir, through his gender, through the Great Council of 101, through precedents. I think it's the first time Otto in 10 episodes really clearly, concisely puts forward Aegon's claim. We hear of Rhaenyra's rights and as named heir every episode, but for me, this is the first time Otto clearly spells out to the viewer, in summary, Aegon's claim. Whether you agree with Otto's assessment is another matter altogether, but I do love Rhaenyra's blunt response. You are no more hand than Aegon is king. I love the delivery as she throws away the badge. Now, the scene with Daemon strangling Rhaenyra has caused a lot of backlash online, specifically once again on Twitter. But truth be told, I'm not sure why people are so shocked by this, claiming it's out of character and pushing the narrative of character assassination. But come on, Daemon is a much more complicated character than that. The man literally killed his first wife with a rock, for God's sake. And you're surprised he's prone to violence? He basically groomed his 13-year-old niece for years. He's not a knight in shining armor. I don't get how some on Twitter have seemed to glorify Daemon and Rhaenyra's relationship so much that they are blind to the complexities of their character and the relationship. Daemon can still love Rhaenyra. He can still be a loving father and caring husband. He can still want to protect his family. But that does not mean he can't also be a bad person as well, who does questionable and rash things. That's the whole idea behind him being known as the Rogue Prince. I think in context of the situation, you can understand his anger to some extent. Your wife has just inadvertently told you your brother never truly trusted you or saw you as his heir. He never trusted you enough with his prophecy. Given what we know of Daemon as a character, I can very much see why he snapped in this context. One thing that does bug me a bit about this scene, however, is the fact they have never talked about Aegon's prophecy until now. It just strikes me as odd that they've been married for years, and if Rhaenyra did think Daemon knew, I find it hard to believe they would not have talked about it at some point. But when you take a step back and look at the bigger issue with some of the backlash, while I do sympathise with fans who have invested a lot of their love of the show in Rhaenyra and Daemon's relationship and their dynamic as a couple, I can't help but feel the term bad writing has somehow become synonymous online with I wasn't paying attention, I overlooked key character details, and now I'm mad for rooting for questionable and shitty people all along. If you look at the context of the show as a whole, you cannot truly say you're surprised a man who killed his first wife, regularly commits horrific acts of violence, might be prone to violent outbursts, even towards the ones he loves. If anything, this adds to his character rather than takes away. For me, the look of Storm's End was perfect, and I love the fact that after so many years, we finally got to see it on screen. The whole Luke's arrival was shot amazingly. I love from the get-go, you had this uncomfortable, ominous feeling. Then the shot of Vhagar just before Luke enters the keep. For me, it really helps get across the sheer size of her. The confrontation inside was great as well. I love how antagonistic Boris is from the get-go. I also love the fact we are seeing this from Luke's POV, so we don't get to see the context of why Aemon is there and to the extent of the deal Boris has just made with him. Ewan Mitchell needs a lot of plaudits for his acting in this scene. It really gave me chills. I could feel the years of resentment seeping into his performance. Oh, and thank God the sapphire eye was not as cheesy as people feared it would be. It looked really cool and adds to Aemon's sense of menace. For me, this scene could have been 5 minutes longer. There were so many great moments we're missing from the book, but on balance, it was great. Now, the chase in the storm is up there as maybe one of my top moments of the season. Visually stunning and heart-racing. Even knowing what was going to happen, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Vhagar just took one bite out of Arrax and Luke, like it was nothing at all. The fear coming from Luke, and then the look of pure shock on Aemon's face, well, left me shocked too. This played out very differently than how I pictured it given the book. But I do like this take on events, that Aemon may not have wanted to kill Luke, just scare him. only for both of them to lose control of their dragons, which ultimately led to the killing blow. What makes this work on a deeper level is they did take the time this season with Viserys' comments on the nature of dragons and Targaryen control of them being an illusion, and Vhagar disobeying Rhaenyra as a way to set up the idea that dragons might have a lot more free will than we knew of. I have a little theory that when Aemon gets back to King's Landing and people learn what he did, no one, even his mother, will believe that it was accidental. My idea goes that maybe his older brother, his king, Aegon, will be the one to believe it was an accident. And this will go far as to explain why Aemon will suddenly be utterly loyal to his brother and his strongest and most loyal supporter. I also believe, despite the idea that Luke's death was an accident in some ways, I think Aemon will choose to embrace the fact he is a kinslayer and become the monster they all think he is. We end with Daemon telling Rhaenyra about Luke's death. And with that turn around and look from Rhaenyra, the Dance of Dragons has officially begun. Once again, I'm giving this episode an 8.5 out of 10, and it really says a lot when a show can be so consistent week in and week out over the course of a season. Yes, there have been some head-scratching, dumb stuff as well, but nothing as bad as the last seasons of Game of Thrones. And come on, name me one show that hasn't had its moments of flawed logic. What I love most about House of the Dragon as a show is, despite its deep connection to Game of Thrones, I think it really won so many people around, and they have embraced it for what it is. I really think by the end of the season, House of the Dragon stepped out of the shadow of its older brother and became a fantastic show in its own right. Keep an eye out over the next week or two for my full season review and deep analysis and review of the series, because man, it's going to be a long, long wait for 2024.